Hi, this is Andrea, and I'm going to be speaking about Andrea Yates, who was a mother who killed her 5 children. If you're not familiar with the story, basically, while her husband was at work, she drowned her 5 children. And I found a very cool website here where they describe the entire experience from beginning to the court case. What happened during the court case, and also giving a history of Andrea and how she became ill. And I'm going to give an overview of what happened to her with my perspective. Now, if you look here at Andrea Yates, she was a fundamental Christian. She wanted to be a good mother, and because her and her husband had this belief that, it's God's will to have, that if you have sex and you become pregnant, then you keep the child. So they basically agreed that whatever child comes along, they'll have. And after the first child already, Andrea became depressive and started having strange mental experiences. And from there on, this entire story is basically a conglomeration of her starting to experience mental illness and excessive and extreme depressive bouts, and hearing voices in the head and things like that. And each time she had more children, she became more depressive and became more suicidal and so forth. And then what happened is her husband introduced her to a friend who was a self-proclaimed prophet, and he was a priest, and him and his husband then took Andrea and her husband under their wings and basically brainwashed Andrea Yates extensively within the premise of continually feeding her ideas that if she doesn't teach her children about God, then she's a bad mother. If she allows her children to do that, then that's evil. Anything that Andrea did or allowed her children to do that this priest and his wife did not agree with, they would then confront Andrea and her husband and basically attack them verbally and say, what you're doing there is evil, and that's wrong, and that's wrong. And this then contributed to Andrea internalizing the point, and from her already unstable mental position, she then started becoming delusional within what she expected of herself as somebody who was now fearing God and fearing what was going to happen to herself and to her children if she didn't follow this path that she was supposed to follow under God's sort of ruling. And therefore her entire mind sort of tried to adapt itself to what was already a mental situation that was busy playing out. And now on the one side, on top of that, you had her trying to live out this American Christian life of it's God's will if we have lots and lots of children, and therefore she was just accepting her role as mother and as wife and as house cleaner. And on the other side, she was becoming this religious fanatic, under the guidance of another religious fanatic. So this was all compounding within this woman's mind, and she was becoming more irrational and more delusional. And eventually she said she was hearing Satan's voice speaking to her, and she was having images flashing before her of people being stabbed with a knife. And then what was happening is she was being taken to therapy, and then she was out of therapy. Then they were trying her on this drug, that drug. Then she was being bounced between therapists and this frickin' priest that kept bombarding her and brainwashing her with this mumbo jumbo of, if you don't do this with your child, they're going to become evil and this, that. And so now on the one side, you've got this poor woman being bounced back and forth between therapists and where she's placed on new types of drugs to try out to see what happens. And on the other side, she's now trying to take care of her children, and she keeps breeding, so she keeps having more children, so she's having to mentally deal with this role that she's pretending she cares for, but is actually being imposed upon her culturally and from a religious perspective. And she is clearly showing, if you read the article for yourself, I will include the link in the description box. You can read everything for yourself, but you can see here that she is now being bombarded with layers and layers of unnecessary mind manipulation and torment by other people who are themselves partially insane and delusional. And the problem here is, which is the point that I'm getting to, is that instead of this woman being taken for effective diagnosis and taken and placed in a place where she cannot harm anybody, and that effective research is done into the medications that she requires, instead of that happening, you have drug companies that are pushing certain drugs, experimental drugs, and nothing is ever effectively done. The drugs that are being produced are marginalized according to the research that's being funded and the research that is available, and of course the money factor. First of all, that's the problem in our current capitalist system, is that research is not 100% effective. Drugs and therapies are not directed 100% towards a solution because there are interests in the background. Everybody knows this. If you try and deny this, you are delusional. If you try and tell me that the capitalist system functions 100% effective to the point, get to the core of the problem, sort it out, it's done. It does not function like that. So that's the first problem we have here. Secondly, now this woman is being bombarded by her cultural definition of herself as a wife, as a mother, okay, which is clearly in this article showing that there is immense strain on her and that she is not actually comfortable in this role that she's been placed in. Next layer that is being added is this religious aspect. I mean, here her husband brings in this douchebag that abuses his wife with this evil talk. I mean, this is just ridiculous. But I do suggest read the article for yourself, and then you can see for yourself the ridiculousness. And yes, in this article, it is over the top what this woman experienced with regards to what this madman, religious madman, said and did to her. But what I'm getting at here is that this is a representation of what happens to most people within our society. Andrea Yates was sort of personified and exaggerated experience, but I'm saying if you look at this is what is happening to most people, so no wonder our society cannot be trusted with life, because everybody is already in combinations of these situations where they are placing themselves or being forced to be in certain cultural upbringings and life choices that they think they are choosing for themselves, but they're not really, because you're choosing what is already being prescribed to you by your family and friends and society, because you just don't want to go against the flow. And then there's the religious aspect which gets forced down your throat, which you again believe is choice, but it's not. It is played around fear, and this article is a classic example of very much in your face the brainwashing that goes on around religion and culture. Okay, so basically what happened in the end was this woman, instead of her being placed somewhere where she could directly get effective treatment, she was placed back with her family. I mean, which first of all is a problem. It never should have happened. And then she went and she drowned her 5 children, saying that she knew that Satan was already now speaking through her and was living inside of her, and that this brainwashing from this priest was now coming through in the way that she was now justifying her own beliefs and fears by parroting what this priest was saying to her, by saying things like, well, she knows her children are, if they carry on the way they are going to hell, and Satan is now living inside of her and he's going to corrupt her children, so she might as well kill her children, and that she now wants the death penalty because she needs to be punished, which basically means she wants herself to be killed because then Satan will die with her. So this is now what this woman basically said throughout the court case, that she is quite happy for them to punish her. She was a bad mother. She had to do what she had to do because she had to kill her children because they were already going down the path towards hell because they were of certain things that they were busy doing, which was frowned upon by God, which is of course the brainwashing mumbo jumbo that this priest man had forced down her throat. So I suggest read this article. It's a very cool representation of what goes on in our society, what really goes on. I mean, to you it looks like, oh, look, Joe Soap and his wife believe in a certain culture. Over there, John and his wife, they are of a certain religion. That's cute. That's nice. Oh, look, that person over there. You know, they have their belief system. But it's not. It is accumulating and manifesting the current world that we are living in. I mean, this woman coming to the point for everything that came together within her mind for her to drown her 5 children. This is a representation of what we as humanity are doing every single day. Half the planet starving or living on the breadline. 3.3 billion people without jobs. Countless beings being tortured, abused, raped, hurt within the current capitalist system, and all of us sit around and in our psychoticness that we have accepted as ourselves, we justify it by saying, oh well, there's God, he's waiting to save us, and I must be a good person, and I must live out my life in society, and as long as I'm a good person and I believe in God and I go do my job every day and I shut up about what goes on in the world, as long as I do these things, I'm fine. And this is what every single person is doing. We are all allowing ourselves to live in our bubble, which we then glorify and coat with some cultural or religious belief, and through that will justify why abuse and suffering is acceptable within this world, just like what this woman was symbolically playing out here, where she said, oh well, I've had to kill my children because they were going down the path of evil, and that's what we do as humanity. We go, oh well, we have to live life, and I must be able to buy stuff that I like, so it's okay that, there's countless beings that are in abusive situations in the capitalist system. I accept the capitalist system because it supports me. Oh well, I allow that. I will just kill half the planet so that I can live comfortably. That's okay. So I suggest read this article. It's very interesting, and that's my perspective on that. Thank you very much.